Vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't kill your friends. Hi everyone, I'm Ayeshe. I've just seen a lot of yoga teachers, not all, thankfully, and spiritual leaders on social media talking about their right, their bodily autonomy to not take vaccination and spreading anti science information about the dangers of vaccination. There is a lot of research, not just opinions, but actual research that says getting vaccinated from COVID is actually safer than watching your friends and family or yourself become long term disabled and even die of COVID. And I just feel like we need to stop talking about QAnon as if it's like a reasonable point of view or, someone's right to an opinion. It's a puzzle, a conspiracy theory started by some pig farmers, and it's supported by Nazi alt-right conservatives whose agenda is to push forward massive distraction. It's a huge threat to democracy. Um, and, people talk about their right, their bodily autonomy. As a feminist, I'm very pro women's bodily autonomy. Um, but, I hear people talking about bodily autonomy, my rights, but nowhere do I hear them talk about community or communal responsibility or civic duty or being a good citizen. And to me, that's a mark of immaturity when you speak about your rights but not your responsibilities. Any Indigenous society, any wise culture puts every adult through uh, a rite of passage where they're taught what their responsibilities as an adult are in the community, what their role as an adult in the community is, their responsibility, not just their rights as an individual, as an adult, but what they have to do to be worthy of those rights. So you demand things from society, but you're not talking about your duty to the community. So I see these people talking, I have a right to my bodily autonomy, but I don't have a duty. When a woman wants an abortion, that is, or, she wants to wear a short skirt or she wants to wear a hijab, that's her personal body. And that's not really affecting anybody else, apart from some people who might have an opinion that they don't agree with their religion or whatever, but that's not actually hurting anyone. Whereas when you refuse to wear a mask and follow community health standards, you are not just making a choice for yourself, you're making a choice to infect other people, to possibly pass on a life threatening disease to them. So that is not just about your body, that is a choice you are making to endanger the lives of the immunocompromised people in your life and to older people who are also very heavily affected by COVID. And, I even have friends in developing countries where they would love to get a vaccine and they can't get one because the companies haven't sold the patents, or, the hospital system has collapsed because the government was in denial about the real threat of COVID. Um, I have a friend in Mexico who is in his 30s who is really seriously disabled and near death because he's got long COVID. 4 million people so far have died from this disease. My friends in Delhi, this is firsthand accounts. This is not fake news, which has become another obsession for conspiracy theorists. They turn parking lots into crematoriums, and the ash from the burning bodies was coming down as snow. So if you're okay with that, if you're okay with saying, yes, I demand my rights as an adult, I don't care about anyone in the community, that, when they make you believe in sanity, they can make you believe atrocities. They can make you commit atrocities, and I know there are some people who feel that governments are becoming autocratic and heavy-handed, but those governments who have, like New Zealand and Australia, have responsibly closed their borders and put their community into lockdown, while at the same time compassionately putting a moratorium on evictions and supporting businesses, have had, we've had less than 1,000 deaths in Australia. Um, and I know it's terrible for people who are losing their livelihood, and I can understand that. I'm also stuck in the Sydney lockdown. I don't enjoy it at all, but I'm willing to do it because I care about fellow citizens. I care about society. And as a Buddhist nun, I have a commitment to compassion and ethics. And I don't just, I mean, I talk about, anyone who follows my feed knows I talk about social justice and rights and not being oppressed, a lot. But I also recognize that as an adult, as a mature person, I have a responsibility to the health and well-being of the most vulnerable in society, and that includes older people, disabled people, and immunocompromised people. And largely the people affected by COVID are poorer people who are frontline workers, people of color, people who may not have access to good medical care or good nutrition, or, so those people are in hardship. And when people who are very privileged, who can afford $1,000 yoga workshop and talk about just fighting a killer disease, a killer virus with echinacea and just being healthy, it's coming from a very entitled, privileged space, but it's also coming from a space of a lack of empathy, a lack of deep spiritual embodiment that understands that what we do to others, we do to ourselves, that we're intimately connected, that my well-being or my enlightenment or my freedom, my liberation can't be completely whole until all of society is lifted up. Together we rise, and I just don't know how mindfulness and yoga have become supporters of a neo-Nazi conspiracy and are following, a lot of the kind of conspiracy theories that happened in Germany in the 1930s, with white supremacy and, believing that disabled people or sick people or elderly people are disposable, which is incredibly disturbing to me. I don't hear you guys talking about the well-being of community or the well-being. I hear you saying, those people who are not healthy, those people who don't do yoga, those people who are not taking care of their health are disposable. It's their own fault, therefore they deserve to die. And you're talking all about yourself and your rights. And yet when somebody gets sick, one of those people who went to the march and exposed others and themselves to the coronavirus, they turn up at the hospital and they expect society to give them medical treatment, and they get very angry if they don't get that treatment. So if you want to be a libertarian, if you want to follow Ayn Rand and the neoliberals, and you don't care about a welfare state or the vulnerable and disenfranchised, don't demand universal health care from the majority of us tax-paying people who actually care about society. By all means, go to the moon, go out, leave the planet, spend $1 billion on a spaceship, and leave the rest of us behind, because it's not that different, from what these billionaires are doing, as the rest of us starve, as 30 or 40 million people in America are evicted because the moratorium on rents and evictions was lifted. The real crisis is not a universal conspiracy by a universal government. The crisis is climate change. The crisis is rape culture, racism, poverty. Like why do we need to create conspiracy theories when all of these real problems are here? And research is not just confirming your biases. Research is actually peer reviewed and tested there's just no, the sad thing is there is really no there is no arguing with these people who are completely brainwashed, but maybe I might reach some people who are just sitting on the fence, but I just don't know. It makes me deeply uncomfortable when I see mindfulness and yoga being hijacked by neo-Nazis and bigots. Before, anyone who's gone to India, like I lived in India 15 years, running a charity there, studying Buddhism and yoga, and I've seen children with matchstick arms and legs begging at the temple gate because they didn't get polio vaccines as children. And before 1905, before vaccinations, 1 in 5 children didn't make it past the age of 5. So, and it's not just because of malnutrition and cleanliness, there's a lot of data that supports this. And, to think that just our immune system is just enough, and, kind of think that positive thinking or crystals or envisioning things to be better, and weaponizing spirituality against people who are fat, poor, disabled, immunocompromised, elderly, and say that it's just their negativity, their fear, and that they don't matter because you're white and able-bodied and healthy, and therefore you don't feel like you need to be vaccinated and you want to get back to your turmeric latte. To me, it's a sign that something is very wrong in the yoga and mindfulness circles that preach the rights of the individual, blissing out at the expense of community and ethics and compassionate responsibility to your fellow people. Because love is how, justice is how love looks in public. So if we're practicing yoga, if we're practicing mindfulness, it should make us more compassionate, more attuned to the needs of those around us, more attuned to our inner needs. And that growth doesn't stop at the border of our skin. That growth reaches into society and makes a difference. And fighting for a conspiracy theory when there are real problems to face just seems to me the height of entitlement. Like they're mistaking the oppression of wearing a mask, they're comparing it to slavery. That's just insane to me. Like, wearing a mask to protect others and yourself from a deadly virus is an inconvenience. It's not oppression. Oppression is what white people did to black people, stealing their children, forcing them to work for no money, whipping them, gang raping them, lynching them, stealing other people's country and resources, or, marital rape and not allowing women to own land and vote, the historical oppressions of patriarchy and racism and colonialism. This is oppression, or the violent murders of gay and trans people. That is oppression. Having to do all the housework and that work not being acknowledged, that emotional labor of women not being acknowledged, that is oppression. Rape and femicide, that is oppression, not, being a responsible citizen and following health directives for a short period of time so we can kick this COVID in the ass and, end it. So I just find the whole behavior of how the spiritual community is reacting, and the spread of conspiracy theories amongst people I consider my friends deeply concerning. And it's not that I wish those people ill or I think that they're, bad people, but I just feel these conspiracy theories are dangerous and have absolutely nothing to do with the essence of yoga or mindfulness, which is compassionate interbeing and justice, and awakening. I don't know how I can reach these people. They seem unreachable to me. I can just send them my good wishes and hope that eventually they'll lose interest in this conspiracy theory. Because I've literally got friends who now believe that, the world is flat, and the Democrats are drinking children's adrenal glands when they sacrifice them, And when I know the the real problems that are going on in the world, like 40,000 children dying every day due to apathy and poverty. To me, that kind of conspiracy theory is such a dangerous distraction while they dismantle environmental protections and do nothing about climate change. So we need to, refocus. Those of us who are still following common sense need to unite and refocus on what really matters rather than um, being distracted by a conspiracy theory, which is completely the agenda of the alt-right, to destabilize, distract, divert, rather than make us focus on what the real issues are, which is the threat to democracy, climate change, sexism, racism, poverty, all of those things that still matter, for a future to be possible for our children. So please, vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. All the best.